Good morning, everyone. If you want to learn more about exploring revenue within the Caribbean, stick around. Your business will benefit from this conversation. I will be right back.
People think that this is the way things are working. So employees, team members, managers, leaders, but in actuality, there's a massive gap between what you think you're delivering and the experience that your customers are actually having on the front line.
Launching an online business needs a little bit of a mindset change. It's not just purchasing the website or the system and then sales come through automatically. There needs to be a little bit of a groundwork.
I mean, we are talking about going after the customer. This seems so obvious, but it's not, because when you are talking in a digital world, this customer now is much more empowered. It's much more criterious. It's much more looking for real relevancy on the way that he's connecting with any engagement, any company, any product, or any offer.
Good morning and welcome to First Atlantic Commerce. Here on the FAC Live Show, we cover all things e-commerce in the Caribbean. Our guests join us from all over the Caribbean and generously share their expertise, knowledge, and insight into the digital world and how we operate within it. If you're joining us from LinkedIn or Facebook, thank you. Don't forget to like and follow our page to continue seeing content that will help your online business. Today, we have the privilege to talk to Stuart Franco. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the TSL Group of Companies and has served on the board since 2011. He has experience within the information technology, also known as the IT industry, as well as the services industry. He is a strong sales professional, which we need during these times, with a BA focus in statistics and economics from the University of Western Ontario. He's a dedicated father of four. And when asked about his handicap in golf, his response was his swing. Needless to say, it's going to be an interesting conversation ahead. Learn about the economic opportunity and risk in the Caribbean today. As always, I'm also joined by Chris Burns, the CEO of First Atlantic Commerce, here to help connect the dots with the technical side of e-commerce. Hey, Chris, how is it in Bermuda today?
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everybody. It is very good here in Bermuda. We are pretty much out of most lockdowns. All restrictions have been lifted. We are able to go pretty much anywhere you want. Masks, of course, still mandatory. The vaccination rates are pretty high. So, yeah, we're in, we've had a good week. Everybody seems to be happy. Nice to see people again. People are starting to travel again. So yeah, it's a little strange. We went to watch the England game the other day in the Euros, and it was actually in a bar full of people, and it was actually quite a strange experience after a year and a half. I didn't really. It was great, but everything's good here at FAC. We're in growth mode at the moment. We're hiring people. We've just taken on software developers. We're looking for business analysts, support people at the moment. So it's a good time to be in our industry at the moment, and I'm glad that we're able to grow the team.
I saw that in the LinkedIn, guys. If you are looking for where that job is, it's somewhere in the tabs. But is that a remote option, or do you have to be based in Bermuda?
Yeah, it is a remote option. I mean, we generally try to hire in Bermuda first. We want to grow our local team, but some of the skill sets that we need, it's hard to find the people locally to do that, but we will try and generally hire here first. And if we can't find the skills here, then we'll open that up to a remote position. So somebody that's within about sort of 2 or 3 hours of our time zone, which is Atlantic Standard Time. But if you go to the careers tab of our website, you can see all the positions we have open right now and all the requirements that we need to join our team.
Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna shift the location to Trinidad, where Stuart is right now, and he's gonna give us a little insight on TSL because, based on the website, their vision is to encourage a culture of research, innovation, change, and adoption to be in the forefront of all new ways of technology to best serve the needs of our stakeholders. What does that mean, Stuart? For those who don't know who TSL Group is, what do you do?
All right. Well, first of all, I'll say thanks for having us. And I'm glad you started with that question and not me responding after Chris and all what he had to say about Bermuda, because we're certainly not in that space at all right now in Trinidad. So I appreciate you letting me off the hook with that. So TSL, very, very proud to be part. We are celebrating 42 years this year. We've been around for a good while. There are a lot of different segments in our business, but what we like to say is we provide end-to-end IT solutions. So really and truly, anything in the market that you need, whether it be from your traditional IT, which is things like networking, switches, routing, etc., which is a lot more traditional, structured cabling, and we then progress from that. So we, like FAC, have a software development team. We develop applications for the financial sector. We've also done payroll, HR, time and attendance. We've done loyalty. We've done cellular airtime. So we have a division that specializes in that space. We also provide business solutions. So things like ERP solutions, the payroll side, as I mentioned. We represent a product called Cispro, which is a pretty decent solution as well. And then out of that space, which is quite aligned with FAC, is our card solution space. In that space, we represent both issuing and acquiring solutions. And that allows us to have relationships with many of the financial institutions in the region. So today, out of Barbados and Trinidad and Guyana, we actually provide service in 18 countries in the region for financial institutions. And yes, it is very exciting. And being in IT is also exciting at a time like this because everyone is being asked to do more for less. How do you do more for less? How do you accomplish that? The answer that popped up in every boardroom today is technology. What technology are we going to deploy? How are we going to deploy this technology to help us be more efficient, do more for less? And who's being leaned on is IT companies like FAC and others. So exciting time and great to be part of it. I hope that gets
awesome.
us where we need to.
Yeah, so you definitely have experience because you rattled off some years before we went live on how long you've been with TSL and in the IT space, some decades, maybe even before my time. I kid. But in the space of economic growth and revenue, because a lot of businesses are grappling, before the conversation would be like, why do I need to do that? Versus, well, I have no choice but to do it. So I want to start this conversation around the economic opportunity with Chris, because if this is your first time here, you're joining at FSC Live, hi. If you're an OG and have been in before, we've spoken about marketplaces across the Caribbean, and that has been a conversation that people are very interested in because they want to learn how to be in the e-commerce space. But if you're new to the e-commerce space, Chris, what would be the advice you give to that business owner?
Yeah, thanks. And that will really depend on the type of business that you're in. So let's start with the sort of micro type merchant. So if you're a sole trader, you have a couple of products that you make yourself, or you're in the service industry. So you could be a tradesman and need to be able to get paid in a sort of touchless, contactless type environment. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach that. So if you're a sole trader, you mentioned marketplaces, and that is a super hot topic within the Caribbean right now because they finally exist. So for years, when we've been and we're talking about years in the industry, I think I have 18, 19 with FAC now, coming up to 2 decades, scarily enough. And you get to this point that where we have over the years been trying to encourage that marketplace type of merchant and set up with the different banks, and it's finally here. So we had a couple of examples on the show recently, And if you're a smaller merchant, that is a great option because all that infrastructure that goes around setting up an e-commerce business and website and merchant account and payment gateway and all the things you need to take into consideration have pretty much been taken care of for you. So you'll be able to upload your product and description and suddenly be in this global marketplace where people can see your product and maybe will see your product and will have not have gone there naturally because they're on the marketplace, they're browsing for different products, and they come across your business. So that's a great way to start as a sole trader. And if your business becomes bigger and more international and more complex, you can then move it on to the next stage, which would be having your own website. And there's different ways you can do that too. So you can either have a web designer create a website from scratch for you. There's lots of great shopping carts out there, templates like WooCommerce or Magento or 3D Cart or Shopify or Wix, all of which have plugins into our gateway from a payments perspective. And I mentioned that, and I've said this quite a few times on the show, is that when you're developing or looking to join a marketplace or developing your own website or choosing a shopping cart, always think about the payments component almost first. Because if you develop a fantastic looking website and then you come to the payments part and that technology, that website, that hosting service is not connected to a payment gateway like FAC that is connected to the banks within the Caribbean, you're going to be stuck not being able to accept payments at all. Because if it only goes to US bank, you can only open a US merchant account if you're a US business. And that is a sort of rabbit hole that you really don't want to go down if you're not planning to be a U.S. company that opens up to tax implications and a number of other items that you don't really want to consider. So, and then the other stage is if you're an existing business, a brick and mortar business, then and this is what we've seen a huge rush of over the last sort of 18 months. Is okay, so I didn't really have an e-commerce or digital strategy pre-COVID. Now everything is shut. I still need to run my business. I still have bills to pay. How do I maintain this business? How do I continue to grow this business? And that has been the mad scramble over the last 18 months in terms of, okay, what is our digital strategy? Did we even have one in the first place? How do I do e-commerce? And that's where we come in as an organization to say, okay, we can help you, look at different parts of your strategy in terms of website templates, payments, who to talk to at the banks to open an e-commerce merchant account, how to help with the integrations, which software developers we know within the industry, within the region that can help with an integration between your website and the back and our payment gateway. And then also work through all the testing and recommend the different marketplaces that we work with. So it really depends. Long way of answering your question is saying, okay, which phase are you in your business? Are you a micro merchant? Are you just starting up? Do you already have an established website but you don't have any payment component to it, but you need to add a payment gateway? Or are you a big sort of brick and mortar player within the region, maybe in one country or multiple countries? And then how do you do that? And then, what is your digital strategy going forward after that? And that's a whole nother topic altogether.
Yeah.
But
that's a separate event. Yeah.
For sure. But, make sure you're picking your technology partners well, because, you just don't want to fall into that trap of, just your friend that knows a little bit about computers.
Yes, we've seen that a lot. So I want to talk about the opportunity and risk that we have ahead of us, because Stuart has been in the sales role, which some people could see some similarities with sales and e-commerce, and being, at Trinidad Systems Limited for close to 2 decades. Obviously, you would have seen a lot of shifts and, digital transformation. Probably about that before the word became trending. So with that knowledge, can you share some advice to business owners who are trying to balance the opportunity and risk? Because you have all these conversations happening around technology and e-commerce, but I feel as though it is being clouded by the hard work that's required. So can you give some insights based on your experience?
Yeah, and I will try to build off of what Chris said with the answer as well, right? So I think it needs to be treated, and I'm going to answer towards like an e-commerce environment, right? It needs to be treated in the same manner, the same way when you were first looking at your business or starting up your business. That risk versus reward analysis, right? So opportunity is to gain, risk is to lose. What are my chances of losing? What are my chances of gaining? What are the roadblocks that I could face? What are the obstacles that are going to be in my way? How am I going to overcome them? And obviously, your appetite for that risk is what's going to be the determining factor, right? So what you need to do is you need to look at that appetite, and you need to ensure, as Chris said, that you align your strategy, not just your short-term strategy, right? And I think that's what I want to build off of Chris's statement. I think a lot of people find themselves in the knee jerk, in the rush, in the trying to deal with what's before them now, that they end up making decisions off of a short term. This is what I need right now. But that decision may pigeonhole them for their future. And it may not be aligned or properly aligned with where they were really planning to go or what vision they really had. So I guess my recommendation would be, your appetite is very important for that risk, knowing that it is a risk. Right? Once you're going to invest in it, it's a risk. But once you invest in it wisely with the right partners and with the right future vision, the risk is diminished and the potential for reward is there. And then Chris very, very neatly went through the difference between the low, the middle, and the high, which is starting off small, joining into a marketplace, determining that you need to launch your own, and then being a big entity already that wants to add that digital space to it. So I think partnering with the right people is critical, and getting the advice that you need to plan for the future is where it should be.
Great. I think that's some good sort of a strategic approach, but we're going to go on a quick break. But before we do, we want to ask questions around like top 3 factors that we must consider, because when it comes to identifying the economic opportunities, we usually default to tourism in the Caribbean. And as we can see with, the biggest Caribbean airline laying off a huge percentage of their staff, what are we actually steering towards? Because as somebody who's in the content creation space, I just recently watched Friends Reunion, and this is a show that has been around for over 2 decades. Over 100 billion people have watched it, and it came from an idea and writing. So I would really like to sort of drill down into what are the economic opportunities for small businesses to explore. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us today. FAC Live covers all things e-commerce, with guests joining us from different islands, sharing their knowledge on the digital world that we are all part of. You're not going to find these conversations anywhere. I assure you, we're actually going to have some hot pepper discussions later on. But be sure to like and follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook so you don't miss this live show. Let social media do the work for you and get that notification. Be sure to comment if you have any questions, and we will try our best to answer them today. We have somebody who has a wealth of knowledge. Let's take advantage of his time. As always, I'm joined by Chris Burns, the CEO of First Atlantic Commerce, here to connect the dots with the technical side of e-commerce. So I want to start with you, Chris, because the economic opportunities that exist for the Caribbean as a small business owner trying to navigate in the world we're living, what are the top 3 factors you would suggest an entrepreneur must consider when identifying these economic opportunities?
So the first one I would say, is really, is making sure that they're doing their research properly. So, in terms of, when people have these good ideas or what they perceive to be a good idea, in terms of starting up a business, and you need to widen your circle in terms of who you're asking whether or not this is a good idea or they think it's a viable business idea. So, like outside your immediate family. Because, if you go to your mother, for example, she may just say, okay, that's a wonderful idea, darling, and you should do that. And then you could spend a lot of time and energy and go through that. And that's it. So, look at your broader circle. Who are your friends? Who are your influencers? Do you have any mentors? And go out to them and say, look, this is my idea. Like, this is my base idea. Do you think it has legs? And be brutal with me, because, and you want that honest advice to come back at you, because you don't want to invest a year or two in an idea that really, you never really should have gone that far to begin with. And then look at, the reason why you're doing it. Like, if you want to be an entrepreneur, just because you don't want to have a boss, that's a terrible way to start a business. Because if you are if you truly want to be an entrepreneur and you truly want to start your own business, your own company, the hours and the amount of work and the amount of commitment that you're going to have to put into that is going to be considerably more than if you're just sort of doing already a sort of 9-to-5 work to rule type job. So, you really got to understand that that's the lifestyle that you want to lead until you can get this business off the ground. And going back to, the conversation we had with Blue Mountain Capital is, where are you going to source the capital for this to start this business off? So, before you give up everything that you currently have, you need to make sure that you can source, some startup capital, whether that's from your friends, your family, a family friend. How are you going to actually fund that business in the first place? And then how are you going to deliver, and then how you deliver that product or service to market? So those are the ideas that I think you should start with first.
Okay, great. And if you're just joining us, guys, we're here with Stuart Franco. He is the CEO of TSL Group of Companies and has a lot of wealth, like in terms of knowledge, being in the digital space as well as being someone in sales. And as I mentioned earlier, Stuart, I was talking about the shift of tourism, this conversation around the opportunity you have within the Caribbean, as well as, I don't know if you know about the drama with Juve and the IP. I think that needs to be evolved even further. But from the economic opportunities in the Caribbean, how should we shift this conversation, this narrative, beyond just tourism?
Oh, that's a good one. I think there's a huge wealth of opportunity outside of tourism. Tourism and oil and gas tend to be the 2 major staples. And yeah, you're right. We need to move away from it. And one of the things that we've seen with the pandemic and what has taken place is the ability for cross-border. So now when you're looking at opportunities, it's not only looking at an opportunity in the country in which you exist or live, but it's looking at an opportunity, whether it be on a Caribbean scale or even a global scale. And bearing that in mind and using that when looking at the opportunity is very, very important. I want to add one thing to one of the things that Chris was just sharing, which was revolving around your startup capital. For us in Trinidad, and I'm sure in other Caribbean islands as well, a huge part is not just the startup capital, but also the US requirement on your business, the type of business you're in. Because Forex is also very, very difficult to come across. All right, so that's just a little tidbit I'll go back. So outside of tourism, I think IT is where it's at. I think technology is where it's at. I think the e-commerce space is huge. Getting people to ease of doing business, being able to conduct transactions, being able to see what you have available being able to place their orders, being able to make their payments, and being able to consume that service or product from you is going to be very critical. And I think Chris also answered it pretty well by saying, asking the right people the questions, broadening that net of advice, making sure you get advice from different players in different spaces that can give you the different angles that you require to really make that educated decision when going into it. That would be the suggestion.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And just if I could just add on to what Stuart said there as well. So, and I think he hit on it twice in this conversation is, the IT side of it. And, I will naturally be biased to that being, running a software company, but, everything that if you look at LinkedIn as a tool, as an indicator of what's happening within the Caribbean right now in terms of what are the hottest topics, for me, it always seems to be around IT, around software development, around networking. And, if you look at the things that are happening with like Tech Beach, for example, and the IDB and all the amount of investment that's going into, incubators or, the different Chamber of Commerce, like, in Trinidad, for example, there's a huge amount that's going into, there's a particular IT division of that now that seems to be very, very active. And there's a lot of really good software developers and IT people within the Caribbean. There's a great source of talent there. And it's a good, from a cost-based perspective, the Caribbean is a good place to grow those types of businesses. And then if you're creating IP, for example, the intellectual property, there are certain jurisdictions where it's really advantageous to do that in. And, if you're and then especially if you're looking at turning that into a global entity, and the cross-border is a really big part of that because, okay, fine, this is what I'm going to do domestically, but, I should be, each island, each country is, intrinsically different to the other, but there are some commonalities there and some common needs in terms of IT resources across all of that. And as Stuart said it right at the beginning, we need to do more with less, and technology is how we do that right now. So, that is just a huge opening. And I think, as people are coming up, people that used to be engineers, for example, building buildings and bridges and, complicated structures, a lot of those people, with that type of mind are moving into the software space, because it's the same type of skill set, the same type of focus, the same understanding, and it lends itself very well to software. So whereas people don't want to go into those types of pursuits anymore, they're pursuing it in IT, and it's a very active industry within the region right now.
I could give you a really good example around what you're saying there, Chris. So Xerox, TSL has represented Xerox for decades, and one of the things you see now is exactly what you're describing. We are seeing this move in this industry of print away from the hardware conversation, the spec conversation, to what can this device do for me now? So it's revolving around software. It's revolving around applications, the ability for you to develop your own applications and access them on the multifunction devices, the ability for you to go into an app store. And I know that's playing off of Apple, but going into a gallery that allows you access to multiple options of different apps that were developed, as you're saying, all over the world. So now all of a sudden you have the ability to get yourself into that global platform a lot faster. Even by this means, you can develop an application that would sit in, for example, and as an example, the Xerox App Gallery, that now Xerox users around the world will have access to your application. And yes, they use e-commerce solutions to pay you, right? So you're billing in that method, and it's not just one-time upfront payments either. You're finding the subscription model being very popular now too. So when you build out and you invest, you actually get in that recurring revenue for long periods of time, which is critical to success as well. So getting those models hammered out as well.
It's interesting that you mentioned the app space because Facebook recently announced they sent emails out to all the business accounts about building software around their API because they're moving into a cookie-less world, meaning there's all this attention around privacy, and eventually legislation is going to catch up. You see it with EU and the idea of what is illegal parameters around owning somebody's, like getting somebody's email address, what happens afterwards. So with that shift, you're also seeing Facebook saying, you know, how are we going to get in front of this? So there is an opportunity for people out there to create solutions around these platforms because there is no border limitation when it comes to building a software that's going to support that. And in that same breath, when we come to the global conversation, we're seeing there's been a trend that it's undeniable because Amazon Prime just passed us. So I'm also guilty. I'm part of the squad that using the platform. So with that said, when it comes to the economic trends that you've witnessed toward developing the Caribbean, can you touch on that Amazon space and the marketplace within the Caribbean and how we treat that?
Sure. I'll answer it this way. I think because of what we're exposed to, as we said, social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, everything that's in front of you, the cable that you watch at home, Netflix, we are all dialed into a particular environment or a particular experience that we're after. And what you'll see is that tends to fall onto, as you just mentioned, that Amazon environment, right? Where I can go and I have the ability to not just see one, but to compare. I can now look at multiple different ways of getting the same thing I'm looking for and compare prices and make sure I feel that I'm being treated right. That economy of scale, if you wish, that you get on that platform is what people are after and what people enjoy. And once that's taken place and it's taken place efficiently, it's very difficult to walk away from. So local entrepreneurs who now starting and looking to create that e-commerce space, that's one of the things they're going to face. So you need to be pervasive. You need to be in the face. You need to get your information out there. You need to ensure people understand and they know what they're coming for, why they come in, and make sure the experience is great because you don't get many shots at it. So going back to what Chris said earlier, partnering with the right people, having the right conversation and having the right information, because that first touch is critical. And once that experience is a great one, they're going to keep coming.
Great. And I want Chris to touch on the market place, because that is definitely a trend within the Caribbean. What have you been seeing, Chris?
Yeah, so it's a really explosive space within the Caribbean right now. And, you know, there are two ways to look at that. And there's, you know, just, okay, I'm in Trinidad or Jamaica or wherever it is, and I just want to buy something local that gets delivered to my door, and then that's fine. So that could be your model, but it's the diaspora that's the really interesting part of that. And when we talked about cross-border before, where there are people from the Caribbean based all over the world, and that number is continuing to grow, and that nostalgia for home and the desire to have products from home is huge, and that's what a lot of these some of these marketplaces are focused purely on that. They're not really looking to do a lot of sort of local delivery. They're looking to do international delivery, and that is a really interesting market right now, because that is filling a niche that hasn't existed for a long time. So there might be some local companies that do have an e-commerce website of their own that you can buy the individual products from. But again, why Amazon is so popular is because you can go on there and buy multiple products, right? You get a whole shipment together, all the different things that I want, and you get it all sent out to you at once. And that's what some of these marketplaces are starting to focus on now, saying, okay, well, I'm going to be this aggregator of goods from Jamaica or from Trinidad or from Barbados, and you can, family members could be from, you could have somebody from Trinidad or somebody from Barbados in the family, and they want to be able to get all that packaged together and sent out. And even, there's an opportunity there from a wholesale perspective. If some of these stores, when you go to these Caribbean communities in New York or some of these cities in Boston or wherever that might be, these local stores, where they want to get and some of these specialty items, you can use these marketplaces to stock that as well. So yeah, the marketplaces is really big. And again, because a lot of the merchants are smaller within the Caribbean, we have a lot of smaller merchants. That's just the matter of fact. And this is just a golden opportunity. I would encourage anybody that has any product, even if you've only got 5 of them or 1 of them, to go onto one of these marketplaces, and that is a storefront that is open to the world 24/7 that can just generate more revenue for your business.
And it allows, if okay for me to add, it also allows you to get into the space quite effectively and quite quickly. So you don't have to worry about a lot of the elements taken care of for you, from the hosting of the platform to even the deliveries, if that's the arrangement you have with the marketplace in question. So it does allow you to make that decision, jump on board, get involved, and then feel your way around. What works, what doesn't work, what's doing well on the sites, what's not doing well, allow you to work out those kinks, get all of that out of the way. And then you could always decide after, using it as a step, well, what next? Where do I go from here? So it's a great way to effectively learn as well, and those learnings with you as you grow.
Yeah, and just to add on to that as well. So you'll see a cost for being on that marketplace, and I think, well, that's it's X% of my profits. But as Stuart's saying, think about everything you have to do if you're going to do that yourself. Build your website, get your payment gateway, pay the bank fees, hosting fees, software development fees. So, this is definitely, if you're a smaller merchant, it is a much more cost-effective way to get online very quickly.
Yeah, I can imagine brick and mortar. Yeah, go ahead, so.
I was going to add, sorry, Chris and I seem to be playing off each other here, right? You made me smile there, Chris, because look, if I'm going to open a business, right, and it's not going to be out of my home, then I need to rent a space, right? I need to pay rent. That same rent or that location, that brick and mortar location you're looking at, treat this marketplace fee as that rent. And if you approach it in that manner, and then if you were to develop a sales team, you would have to pay that sales team commission. So if you're paying that marketplace commission, it's almost as though you have a sales rep. So start feeling it in that manner. Start breaking out the fees and looking at them in comparison to what you would have to do in a brick and mortar version. That will help you analyze, separate, put yourself in a position to determine, is it worth it or not for me? And most times, Chris is right, it's a perfect starting point.
Okay, just want to make sure Chris doesn't have anything else to add, because there was a rhythm that was happening. I didn't want to interrupt. Man, we're learning a lot today. And I also want to tack off on that and have a discussion around brick and mortar and this idea that digital is entirely digital, meaning everything's going to happen online. And what I've seen, even with previous guests like Vivian and Phil from Cool Market and Carib Shopper, there's some on-the-ground work needed. And I want Stuart to dispel the myths, but right after this break. Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us today. FSC Live covers all things e-commerce, with guests joining from different islands, sharing their knowledge on this digital world that we're all a part of. You're not going to find these conversations anywhere, and it's pretty beneficial for you to make sure to like and follow us on Facebook so you don't miss a single live show. Be sure to comment if you have any questions, and we'll try our best to answer them today. Today, Stuart Franco, who is the CEO of TSL, Trinidad Systems Limited, is here to give advice because he has a wealth of knowledge that we need to tap in. And before we went live, we had a little typical conversation around what he believes is one of the major factors to expanding within the Caribbean, because the TSL Group has offices in Trinidad and Barbados, but I believe is operating, they have customers in 17 territories. So shed some light for us, Stuart, for those who may be saying, okay, the Caribbean is the ideal potential for me to go and, squeeze out that US, that Forex. What would be your advice? What's the number one thing you'll tell them that they need to start?
Right. So for me, it's going to come down to the type of business. What is it that you're looking at? If you're looking at a services-oriented business, then having brick and mortar is not really necessary at the onset. As you grow, you will determine where that brick and mortar is needed and who you can service from there. And we're talking from experience. TSL at the start, we felt brick and mortar was needed every. And it's a big investment. It's a big investment to do it, and we ended up scaling back. No harm in seeing these things happen, and you learn from your experiences. So we did have maybe brick and mortar in six Caribbean islands. We ended up scaling back to 2. I know that sounds like a big drop off, but what we found ourselves in the 2 is actually in a much more efficient manner taking care of the territory. Because you're able to specialize, you're able to zone in on a lot of what we do. You can do remotely. The advice, the recommendation, what customers need, how they need it, the servicing of them from the brick and mortar locations is very, very doable. So I would suggest you look at what you're offering, what you're planning to get into, where your market is going to be, and then strategically elect where you feel you have to be and take it slow. Don't rush into any. And as your business grows and develops, you will be pulled in the direction of where you need to be. That's been our experience.
Wow, that is a hell of a lesson that I feel like this is a master class for any new business owner to learn. 2 questions. Where are the 2 locations that you guys decided on, and why?
So we remain in Trinidad and we remain in Barbados. Why? I would say 2 major factors, the clientele and the ability to service from there. So Barbados currently handles the clientele for the OECS islands, and Trinidad handles the Dutch and Trinidad. We actually just made the decision to expand and made an investment into Guyana. Everybody will smile at that. Guyana is the hot topic right now. Everybody's looking to invest in Guyana. You're not alone. We're not alone. We want to invest in Guyana and be part of Guyana and the future of Guyana as well. Guyana's projected GDP growth is way outweighing anywhere else, right? So we have made an investment and we're part of a company across there called Cinetech Limited, small IT company. And we've been working really well together with them so far. So those are the 3 that we chose. But I don't want to influence anybody's decision. I think it's really going to come down to what your business is. What are you going to be getting into, and find out where is best for you. All I'm trying to say is don't feel you have to have brick and mortar locations everywhere. It's just not.
You mentioned Guyana, and everybody's heading towards there. I always say a trend is a trend for a reason. So if that's where it is at, definitely that's I'm making notes. And on the subject of brick and mortar, Chris, can you give people an idea of the costs? Because a lot of the times you take for granted if you open up a store in the mall, there's a rental cost, there might be a security cost, there is the actual staff that you hire. But when you shift online, there are different elements and expectations for the people that you hire. what would be the top 3 things that people need to invest in when they shift from that brick and mortar to putting their shop online?
Sure. Okay. And just to add to Stuart's comment just quickly. So we operate in 30 countries globally, and we have one office here in Bermuda. So it's a similar thought process for us. We're a very online business, obviously, but and there was thoughts about setting things up in maybe Trinidad or Jamaica or Costa Rica, because we do a lot of business out there as well. But we we can put people there, certainly, and that services the industry that we have there. But to open the office, just financially, didn't really make sense for us to have that brick and mortar. And then fast forward, the last 18 months of COVID, it's proven that people can work from anywhere. I think I hope we're going to go back into a more of a hybrid model, where people are in but have the flexibility to work remotely, and because there's an element that you lose when everybody's remote. In terms of being able to walk into somebody's office, or the spark that you get from the conversation of just running to somebody in the hallway, or some ideas that happen that just I don't feel just happen well when everybody's remote all the time. So I think hopefully there'll be a hybrid model going forward. But the 3 things when you're switching from brick and mortar to online, is first is your online presence, your website. So how are you online in terms of your shop front? Are you just a website? Are you on Facebook? Are you on Instagram? Are you on TikTok? If you're on social media, don't forget your website too, because you're much more searchable via your website than you are from just your Facebook page or your Instagram page or TikTok. So don't forget the website. It is much more static, and you can do much more creative things with social media for sure. And that's a really important outlet. But don't forget the website too. And then if you are online and you're selling, okay, so how are you going to receive your payments is number 2, right? So are you a cash on delivery type business? Well, at the moment, that's not a great option. Whereas before, maybe that's what you wanted to do. But there's, issues, security concerns around that, and delivery issues around that if you're going to do cash on delivery. So, how are you going to get paid online? Cards are naturally the easiest way to secure your payment online, because they're instantaneous too, right? So if somebody orders a product, let's say if you're a food delivery business, and somebody says, okay, I'm going to pay cash on delivery, and they order to an address that might not be theirs, but somebody turns up on a doorstep, they grab the food and run. Okay, so you're out the food, you're out the cash. If you secure payment online for that, you immediately have that payment secured, and your drivers are more secure because they're not carrying cash around, as an example. And same thing with any other product or service. If you're shipping a product, you want to use a card-based payment system through your website, to ensure payment before you start shipping products. Because once you start shipping, of course, then you've got, the shipping costs themselves, and then the retrieval, and then if there's issues with chargebacks, how are you going to deal with that? So definitely, work out your card acceptance strategy within there. And, when you're looking at like Trinidad, for example, for now, whereas before there was hesitance to accept payment online because it was just credit cards. Well, now the debit cards are branded now too. So that 85% of the population that didn't have a credit card suddenly has a card in their pocket that they can use to purchase online. So you have a whole new, very large audience. It's very rare that you get access to that massive increase of potential clients within a marketplace. And then third, your banking relationship. So your banking relationship, you need an e-commerce merchant account to accept credit card payments online via your website. So it's not the same as a personal account. It's not the same as a corporate account. It's not the same as a POS merchant account. So you have to go to the bank and specifically ask to apply for an e-commerce merchant account. And then it's knowing which people to talk to within the bank as well. So we can help direct you in all those areas, especially on the e-commerce merchant account side. Because if you go into a bank and ask a teller about opening an e-commerce merchant account, they are not going to know what to do with that. So and you could get a runaround for weeks and get frustrated and say this is too difficult, and I'm not, nobody wants to do business with me, etc. All that old story that we have all told ourselves over the years for reasons not to do e-commerce. It's really, once you talk to the right people, then you realize what an easy process this can be.
I would like to endorse. I would like to endorse that. I think what you said is really, really important, Chris, because as we mentioned earlier, right, first experiences tend to stay with you. And I think at the onset, when e-commerce was first being considered, it may have been viewed as a very difficult process to get going or to get it in place and the length of time. I think over those days, it doesn't exist anymore. And I think all the institutions are now involved. They're all participating. The time to get up and running is a lot better, a lot shorter. The transition is a smoother one. It's a better experience altogether. And I think that's going to happen. And I think Chris is right. The net of potential clients is also growing, which is also a motivator to get involved, because instead of owning credit cards, now you're going to be in a position to debit and credit, which would be good. It widens your net of potential clients. And I think it's no secret, a lot of the governments in the Caribbean are talking about and working towards launching their own electronic currency, if you will. And if this cashless conversation does take off and we start to move in that direction, if that were to be integrated into the system as well, now it opens up everything. And as Chris was saying, moving away from that base transaction is important. So if that were to come, it'll become more fluid.
Great. I think that's definitely a theme in this conversation today, the idea of shifting towards that digital space and making sure that you're ready. Because even when we go out there maskless, we're still going to have a hybrid mentality. A lot of us aren't going to want to go to supermarket because we've gotten accustomed to delivery, true story, to your door. So if that's the case, the economic opportunity within the Caribbean lies in making sure that you're ready for that customer, because that customer is accustomed to using their Amazon account, accustomed to that space. But then when you give them that opportunity, it's a behavior that doesn't necessarily change. It just shifts to your website. We have a question here from Nigel Wall. And this is definitely something I think Chris will have to ask. Why FAC versus PayPal or say Stripe?
Yes, the age-old question. So PayPal is not available to businesses in the Caribbean. And I know there's going to be a few people that will, hold on a second, Kieran Rose says you can do PayPal in the Caribbean. And theoretically you can, but there's issues with getting payout to your account, right? So I think there's one bank that allows transfers to their credit card from PayPal onto the card. It's a bit clunky, and PayPal can be expensive, if I'm honest. So you can pay over 3% and 30 cents a transaction for PayPal, which you can get that for less locally within the Caribbean and do domestic currency. So, and PayPal is only going to do US dollars. So if you're selling locally and somebody with a local card in, like, say, TT dollars comes to your site and you've got a US dollar PayPal account, then that card holder is going to get an FX fee attached to their card, which they won't like because they paid more. And it can cause confusion on the credit card statements, because they, well, hold on a second, it said, 300 TT dollars and now I paid 350. So, and that can lead to chargebacks. And if you have too many chargebacks for your business, they can actually shut down your merchant account. And PayPal is a very different experience to FAC, for example. PayPal is like a redirect. People are taken away from your site. Technically, they have to log into their PayPal account. They have to use their cards. FAC is all in the background. We're all in the background. You don't even know we really exist to a card holder. It's a very different shopping experience. And FAC is connected to just about every local bank within the Caribbean in all the countries, whereas PayPal is just not in the region at all. Stripe is similar to PayPal. The only way I know you can use Stripe is through their Stripe Atlas product, which technically requires you to set up a Delaware company, which is really just a paper company, and then that allows you to contract directly with Stripe, and they will settle your payments on your behalf, again only in US dollars, and then you have to repatriate that US dollars back to you. So there's a couple of things on that. A, I don't really know how that stands up against cross-border acquiring regulations, and B, you're just bleeding money out of the local economy. So it's just, you're not using any of the local infrastructure to make that happen. So I think from that perspective, it really depends what you want. If you want to be, if you want something to work locally, and have really strong local customer service, then we're definitely a great way to go. If you want to go with PayPal and Stripe and have all the complications to go with that, then good luck.
I think you're good. I think Nigel is sorted. He's like,
okay.
Understand. He is good to go. He is ready.
The point, I would add one thing, Ted, that I think Chris started to touch on at the end, which I think is critical. Nigel, at the end of the day, you have relationships that exist today with financial institutions. You're going to be able to maintain those relationships, and you're going to be able to call on those relationships if something were to happen. And I think that's priceless. Being able to maintain that and work with those folks that and you've been working with, just adding e-commerce to your portfolio that you have with them is very, very advantageous, rather than starting up a whole new relationship with someone that's not here locally, that if something were to happen, you have to try and deal with, figure your head out. How am I going to deal with this? How are they going to help me? Will they help me? What recourse can I have? Whereas with your bank, which is your local bank, your relationship that already exists, it's a much smoother transition.
Yeah, I mean, good luck trying to get a phone number from PayPal or from Stripe that you can actually talk to somebody. Ours is on our website. You get straight through to somebody. Most of our partners have my cell phone, my WhatsApp. Stuart and I talk on it all the time, for example. So yeah, it's a very different experience.
Okay, so we have a question from Alana. This is a quick one. I don't know, guys, why you always do this? Always 2 minutes before the end. So just a quick one. Alana wants to know, are there any new technologies, opportunities you can pinpoint that can aid the Caribbean in creating value on a global scale? I would say one, Stuart. Give us one new technology.
I guess I'm going to cheat here, and I'm going to use what we've been talking about all day. I think it's going the route of e-commerce. It's allowing yourself to get into that space of being accessible to many from a single point. It's going to make a big difference. It's a step that we all need to take.
Awesome. Okay, so I have one more trick question that no one on this call knew that I was going to ask, but I think it's so necessary. Guys, listen to this. Ready for this? All right. So Stuart recently brought to attention that for some reason, Trinidad and Tobago Moruga scorpion pepper has been dethroned. Mind-boggling. What? Why? Anyways, if that's the case, because you usually associate Trinidad and pepper, what is the economic opportunity there for businesses? Because we have so many different pepper sources. I actually have friends who want me to ship across, but unfortunately a lot of the companies don't do liquids. So what is the economic opportunity there for business? Trick question.
Chris, you go in first or me? Me?
You go for it. You're on the ground.
To be honest, Pauline, this is a place that's very dear to me. I think local content is something that often
yes. It often
forgotten. Very sadly so. Very proud to tell you that we're a local IT company owned by locals. And yeah, there's so many artisans. There's so many people that are producing fantastic product right here on our home soil. And instead of getting the support from us, we buy foreign product. And I think finding that happy mix. I'm not saying don't buy foreign product, because that in a way is also supporting the local distributor or the local person that's assisting that brand, right? But paying some focus to local content, giving that local person the opportunity to get their brand out there, I think is huge. And I think Export TT has been formed and put in some effort behind it to try and get us all prepared for when someone does come to you and say, I want your product and I want it for the United States, I want it for New York, for Toronto, for all those locations that Chris was mentioning earlier, where that local group exists and they want that local product available to them, that nostalgic feeling. Are they ready? Do they know what they need to do, how they need to do it? We need to be spending time educating in that space and making sure everybody understands if they are called on, that they're ready, that their product is ready, their labeling is ready, that they meet all the standards that are required to get out there. And I think it's huge, Pauline. That's a big one. A big one.
I see no lies. I see no lies.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just to echo that as well. So I'm a huge hot sauce person. I love it. I put on way too much things. So my three favorite ones are actually, they're from the Caribbean. So Bertie's, which is Trinidad, right? So I bring that back every time I come back from there. Obviously not a while recently. Barron's, I think, is another one, which is done by Grace. And the restaurant at the Hyatt in Port of Spain, somebody makes a homemade one there, which is just fantastic. And I think they've actually started bottling that as well. So yeah, and there is, I mean, they just stand out from everything else, like just these mass produced like American products, for example. It's a different experience, different taste profile. It's more unique. And all the things that Stuart just said in terms of being ready for that, and then use those marketplaces to do it. Like if you're a small batch to begin with, then use those marketplaces because they will help you get the word out about that. So I think that's super important. That's an industry that I don't know. It's a strange thing with hot sauce. It becomes almost cult-like. And people get really into it and they want to have buns from different parts of the world and show it off to their friends and, try and kill somebody with the scorpion pepper that they got from somewhere else. And it's a strange beast, but very, very lucrative market if you do it right, I think.
So Bertie's is actually family. So Chris, I really appreciate that shout out to Bertie.
Oh, okay, excellent. I didn't know that.
I doubt very, very highly Logan is listening to this, but if he is, Logie, keep it up, brother. The product is awesome.
It is. Well, that's great. I didn't know that. Wasn't even staged.
Yeah, because you guys didn't know that question was coming, and it's just exactly. Perfect. Like, it's awesome. All right, guys. So there's some activity happening in the comment section. We will go deal with that afterwards because unfortunately we have to close this session as usual. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bye, guys. But what we're going to do is remind you of our next event. But before I do, thank you so much to Chris and Stuart for joining us today. There's been a trend actually where the importance of content creation, which is really a brand storytelling space, is just, I can't imagine it. Importance is not even the word, crucial for your business to be relevant and to exist in a world that is borderless, basically. So be sure to join us on next Tuesday, on the 6th of July at the same time, when we talk about PCI compliance and why you need it in the Caribbean with Ronald Vieira. in-house actually. That's family happening in FAC. As always, be sure to like and follow our page on LinkedIn and Facebook so you don't miss a single live show. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I will see you next Tuesday. Goodbye, everybody.